Shabbos Daf Mem discusses various halachas about the isser of taking a bath or showering on Shabbos. It begins a discussion of whether or not one is allowed to wash the body, even if it's not all at once, just limb by limb, or washing the body, just leaving one limb unwashed. We'll also have a discussion as to how the entire isser of washing in hot water at all on Shabbos began, and the various different steps of that decree. It was one that took many steps until it reached its final form. Then we'll speak about heating things near the fire, not actually on the fire, just near the fire, whether there's an isser to cook oil on Shabbos or not. And then we'll discuss a case of heating something, a flask of oil in the bath, and various different halachos that pertain to that. Then we'll end off with a halacha about swimming and whether or not you're allowed to swim on Shabbos and situations in which you are. The Gemara has just finished discussing the various opinions of the Tanaim in the Mishnayos concerning the rabbinical decree against showering or bathing with hot water on Shabbos. This is referring to hot water which was heated before Shabbos. It wasn't heated in a forbidden way, but there's still a decree that one may not wash his body with hot water on Shabbos. Now the Gemara gets into a dispute between two Amoraim. There's actually going to be two different versions as to what the case of the Machlokes was. And for each version, we will have the same three proofs to one side. The Gemara says we have a machlokes between Rab and Shmuel about bathing one's entire body on Shabbos. Now, the first version of this dispute is that the question is, are you allowed to wash the entire body limb by limb? I mean, we've seen clearly that the Mishnayos have said it's forbidden to bathe or shower the entire body at once. But the question here is, what about limb by limb? So Rav says it's permitted and Shmuel says it's forbidden. And the Gemara in this first version will bring three attempts to prove that Rav is wrong, and the last one will be successful. The first one is, the Brisa says that as follows: hot water was heated before Shabbos. You're allowed to wash your hands, face, and feet, but not the entire body on Shabbos. The Gemara says it clearly says that Rav is wrong. It says you're not allowed to wash your entire body with water that was heated before Shabbos. The Gemara says no, that just means you can't wash your entire body at once, but you're allowed to wash it limb by limb. The Gemara says, but what do you mean? But it says what you're allowed to do. It says you're allowed to wash your hands and your feet. It doesn't say you're allowed to, and your face. You're not allowed to wash more than that. The Gemara says, no, what it means is you're allowed to wash your entire body in a way of hands, feet, and face, meaning limb by limb. Just like when you wash your hands, your face, and your feet, you wash it limb by limb. So here we're saying you're allowed to wash your entire body limb by limb, just like your hands, your face, and your feet. Okay, now the second proof will be very similar. We have another brisa that says they did not allow washing on Shabbos with hot water that was heated before Shabbos, except for one's hands, face, and feet. So you see clearly washing the entire body is forbidden. Gemara says no, not so clear. It's forbidden to do anything to wash the body at once, but washing hands, face, and feet, and washing the entire body in that manner, meaning limb by limb, is also permitted. Okay, now the Gemara has a brisa which is clearly against Rav. The Brisa says as follows: water which was heated before Shabbos, you may use it to wash your hands, face, and feet on Shabbos, but not the entire body, even limb by limb. Here it says clearly even limb by limb, and the Brisa ends off and says, and certainly if you heated the water on Yom Tov, it's forbidden also. Okay, so here you see clearly that Rav is wrong. Now, the Gemara now has a totally different version of this machlokes between Rav and Shmuel, and this is the version that was taught by Rabbah. Rabbah says the machlokes was not about washing the entire body limb by limb. It's about bathing the entire body at once, but leaving one limb dry. So it's not the entire body. So Gemara says all the three brises which we discussed earlier clearly disprove this opinion, because they all say you're not allowed to wash the body. You're only allowed to do it to wash hands, face, and feet, not more than that. And you couldn't say the answers we said before that it's limb by limb, because this opinion doesn't say limb by limb. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, did Rabbah do in according with this understanding of Rav that he says, meaning this opinion that Rabbah quoted in the name of Rav, that you're allowed to wash the entire body at once as long as you leave one limb unwashed. So did Rabbah actually do that? Now, Rav Yosef asked Abaye, did Rabbah do that or not? Abaye would know, because Abaye was raised in Rabbah's house as an orphan. So Gemara says that Abaye says he didn't know. So the Gemara says, well, hold on a second, I don't understand the question. How could you ask, could Rabbah do like what he said in the name of Rav? That was refuted. It was refuted from three different brises. So Mar said, no, the question was, because maybe Rav didn't hear the refutations, he didn't hear all the proofs against him, and therefore maybe he followed it. So the Gemara says, listen, if he didn't hear that it was refuted, then he certainly followed it, because we do know that Abaye said that Rabba was careful to follow every halacha that Rav said, except for 3. There were 3 where he followed Shmuel and not Rav. And those 3 are the following. He held like Shmuel, you're allowed to move tzitzis from one clothing garment to another one. You're allowed to light one Hanukkah candle from another. And you're allowed to drag a bench on Shabbos if it's not certainly going to create a ditch in the ground. So these are the only 3 where Rabba didn't go like Rav. So certainly if he didn't know that Rav's opinion was rejected, he would follow it. Says, no, not necessarily. When we say that Rabbah followed all of Rav's opinions, it just means all of his chumras, every time he ruled stringently. Where he ruled leniently, he didn't necessarily follow. And over here, he's ruling leniently that you're allowed to wash the body except for one finger. Now we have a Brisa and Gemara that give us the details of how the decree, the rabbinical prohibition against taking a bath on Shabbos, how it developed. And we'll see that there are quite a few steps in the decree. There's one step that's actually left out of the Brisa quoted by the Gemara, and that's that at first, midoraisa, the only thing that's actually forbidden is heating up water on Shabbos by having the fire put under the water or the water put under the fire. Now, the way the bathhouses used to work was that the room with the baths had a basement, and there were holes in the floor, and there were fires burning under those holes, and those holes would heat the water that's in the bath. So theoretically, you could have left the fires burning before Shabbos, and those would provide heat and continue to heat the water in the baths on Shabbos. Now, the Rabbanan said that that's forbidden because people may decide it's not hot enough and go downstairs and stoke the coals. So it's forbidden to bathe on Shabbos in water which was heated on Shabbos, even in a permitted way, midaraisa. It's not only is it forbidden to bathe in that water on Shabbos, it's forbidden to bathe in it after Shabbos until such time has passed after Shabbos as it could have been heated. In order that we're not gain from the heat that was provided on Shabbos. Now, if the fires had been running before Shabbos, but they were turned off, or the holes to allow the heat to heat the water were covered and closed before Shabbos, so that there's no actual heating of the water happening on Shabbos, then it was initially permitted to take a bath in that Shabbos, in that hot water on Shabbos, even though the water is hot. But the only decree initially was that you can't have the water be heated on Shabbos. If the water is heated before Shabbos, then it was permitted to bathe in that water which was hot on Shabbos. Now, the problem is that the people who ran the bathhouses started violating the rules, and they started leaving the vents open on Shabbos and heating the water on Shabbos. And when people came in to take a bath, they would shut the vent and say, oh, we had it shut all the way since the beginning of Shabbos, and this water was heated before Shabbos. So what the Chachamim did was they made it usher, they forbade to take a bath in any hot water on Shabbos, even if it was heated before Shabbos. That would prevent them from doing that. Now, however, at that point, you were still allowed to take a bath in that hot water right after Shabbos. You do not have to wait until time has passed after Shabbos to heat the water, because this water was heated before Shabbos, not after Shabbos. The Gemara quotes a Brisa that says the same thing is true on Yom Tov, and the Gemara actually has a story here that Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah went into a bathhouse in Bnei Brak. Now, it was forbidden for them to take a bath because the Chachamim had already made a decree forbidding using any hot water for bathing on Shabbos, even if the water was heated before Shabbos. However, they were allowed to take a schwitz. They were allowed to steam bathe. They were allowed to walk through the hot air of the bathhouse, which was full of steam. As a matter of fact, the Brisa says that you're allowed to take the steam bath, and you're allowed to go outside to the outer room of the bathhouse and rinse your body in cold water. According to some Rishonim, the water was actually hot, but we'll go with Tosfos that the water was cold. Now, before they did this, they made sure that the tub of hot water was covered up with planks of wood so that nobody would suspect them of having taken a bath. Now, what actually happened afterwards? The Chachamim saw that what people were doing was that they went into the bathhouse and they took a bath in hot water, and they came out and they said, "Oh, we just took a schwitz. We just went to the steam bath." So they said, "You know what? No more steam bathing. You're not allowed to do that either." But then what was happening was that people were taking a bath in hot water, and they were saying, "Oh, we weren't using water that was heated by a fire. We were using water that was heated by the hot springs of Tiberia." So the Chacham said, "Okay, no bathing in hot springs. The only thing at that point that you're allowed to do is take a bath in cold water." However, the Gemara says that at that point, the Chachamim saw that people couldn't stand to not be able to bathe in hot water at all on Shabbos, and therefore they said, "Okay, you're allowed to bathe in hot springs." But all the other Isurim against hot water heated before Shabbos and Schwitz, those all stayed in place. One thing that you're allowed to do, the Brisa says, is you're allowed to walk through the bathhouses in a big municipality. You don't have to worry that that people will think you went for a schwitz. You just walk through. That wouldn't be a problem. Now, that's only, the Gemara says, that's only if it is a big city where the bathhouses are big in area, and if you walk through there, you're not going to schwitz. However, the small ones in the small towns, you're going to have a schwitz just by walking through them, so you wouldn't be allowed to do that. Now, the Brisa had said that the Chachamim had to add the decrees because there were more avaryonim, there were more people who were over Aveira, who did Aveiros. So now the Gemara says, interestingly enough, even somebody who just violates an Isser D'Rabbanan, you're allowed to call him an avaryon. You're allowed to disparage him and use the term sinner to refer to him in order to prevent people from violating even Isurei D'Rabbanan. The Gemara now says there's actually another method of washing the body which is included in this Isser, in this prohibition. You cannot make your body wet with cold water and then go stand near the fire so that the fire heats the water that's on the body. That's the same as bathing in warm water, and that's also forbidden. Once we're on the subject, the Gemara says you are allowed to heat a towel in front of a fire and put that on your stomach. That'll help with a stomach ache. You should not do that with a kettle of hot water because it may be too hot and may burn your stomach. As a matter of fact, you shouldn't do that even during the week. It's an unsafe practice. Now, having discussed the subject of heating things near the fire, the Gemara goes into that. Here, the issue is not taking a bath anymore. The issue is heating things on Shabbos. It's a question of approaching the Isser of cooking. And we have an interesting brisa here which discusses placing water near a fire or placing oil near a fire. Again, we're not discussing on a fire, we're talking about near a fire. So we're going to be discussing oil and water, and there's three opinions in the brisa, and it's not initially clear what the difference between the opinions are and what each one holds. The Gemara will explain that there are three distinct opinions as to how you're allowed to heat things near a fire. So the first opinion in the brisa is that of the Tana Kama. Now he doesn't say anything about oil. The Gemara will be very interested to know why. He only discusses water, and he says you're allowed to do the following thing. You're allowed to take a flask of water, put it near the fire, close enough for it to take the chill off the water, but not for it to actually become hot. Hot here we define as what's called yad soledisbo, hot enough to make your hand recoil from the heat. Okay, so that is a Chacham's opinion. You're allowed to put the flask of water near the fire. Rabbi Yehuda says, so here's what you can do. He discusses oil. He says you can have oil and you can put it in front of the fire. Again, close enough for it to be warmed, but not for it to become actually hot. So he talks about oil. And then you have Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, third opinion, who says, no, you can't do that. What you can do is a woman can rub her hand with it, or she could rub her son with the oil, and then he can stand, or she can stand in front of the fire and heat the oil that way. Meaning the three opinions are as follows. The first opinion is the Tana Kama says you're only allowed to heat water near the fire, or he says about heating the water. Then you have Rabbi Yehuda who says the same thing about oil. You can put a flask of oil near the fire. And Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you're only allowed to heat oil near the fire if it's on your skin. So now the Gemara tries to understand this. What are these three opinions? So the Gemara has, of course, a machlokes, which is between Rabbah and Rav Yosef, as to what the Tana Kama really holds. The Tana Kama didn't say anything about oil. He just talked about water. So what does Tana Kama hold about oil? So Rabbah says that, so Rabbah and Rav Yosef, it's Rabbah and Rav Yosef against Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. So Rabbah and Rav Yosef say that the Tanna Kama didn't say anything about oil because the Tanna Kama holds you allowed to do whatever you want with oil. There's no isser of heating oil at all. Now, why would that be? He holds that the isser of cooking doesn't apply to oil. Now, the reason for that is that the malacha of cooking is defined as changing the quality of an item through heat. Hot oil and cold oil serve the same function. There's no difference in the functionality of hot oil and cold oil, and therefore you haven't accomplished anything by cooking it. That's what the Tanna Kama holds. Water, however, is different. Hot water is a drink. Cold water is not. So the Tanna Kama therefore holds you're allowed to put oil next to the fire. You don't have to worry. It can get hot. You can do whatever you want according to Rabbah and Rav Yosef's understanding. Now, what then does Rabbi Yehuda hold? Rabbi Yehuda says no. The Isser does apply, but you're only allowed to put it near the fire in such a way that it could take the chill off, not enough that it could actually cook, which is defined as, again, being hot enough that make your hand recoil from it. Now, Shimon ben Gamliel says not only is there a problem of cooking oil, but you can't even put it near the fire. The best you could do is to put it on your skin and allow it to warm that way. Now, that's how Rabbah and Rav Yosef understand the three opinions in the Mishnah. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says, no. The Tanna Kama, in regards to oil, actually holds that it's usser, it's forbidden to heat it near a fire at all. The reason why he didn't discuss is not because it's mutter. He didn't discuss because it's completely usser. He says that there is no permitted way to heat oil near a fire. Now, Rabbi Yehuda comes along, and Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is that you are allowed to heat oil near the fire, as long as it doesn't get hot enough to cook, just to take the chill off. And Shimon ben Gamliel says, no, you're not allowed to heat it near the fire. It's not totally forbidden near the fire. It's forbidden to put it near the fire in just a flask. The best you can do is put it on your skin. That is an unusual manner of heating oil, and that you're allowed to do. It's in between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yehuda says you're allowed to put the flask near the fire as long as you're just planning to take the chill off. Chachamim say you're not allowed to do anything. And Rabbi Gamliel says you're allowed to heat it on your skin. Now, the Gemara says, what's the halacha? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel says, both oil and water are the same halacha. You're allowed to warm it up until, and not including Yad Soledes, up until the hand recoils from the heat. But if it's that hot that it's Yad Soledes, the hand recoils from the heat, you're not allowed to heat it up that much. How do you define Yad Soledes? The Gemara says, Rachva says, the definition is any level of heat that's hot enough to scald the skin on the stomach of a baby, that's called Yad Soledes for an adult. Now the Gemara quotes an incident that happened with regards to taking a bath in a bathhouse on Shabbos, and the Gemara says you can learn 3 halachas out of this. So what happened? Rav Yitzchak bar Avdim, he says, I once followed Rebbe into a bathhouse in Tveria on Shabbos. Now the bathhouse was heated with hot springs of Tveria, which we said is still permitted to bathe in. And Rav Yitzchak bar Avdim says, I wanted to place a flask of oil in the water of the bath in order to warm it up. So Rebbe said to me, this is what you should do. You should take water out of the bath into a different kli, a different container. You shouldn't place your flask of oil into the bath water. You should take water out. And then in the bucket that you'll fill with the bath water, you can put your flask of oil and heat it up in there. So Gemara says you learn from here 3 halachas. First of all, we learn that the halacha is that it's forbidden to cook oil on Shabbos. We weren't sure about that, but obviously there is a problem. Otherwise, Rebbe would not have had an issue. Second thing we learn is that if you transfer water from the kli that it cooked in to a second kli, what we call kli sheni, then you don't have to worry about cooking. There is no cooking that happens in a kli sheni. The Gemara will later give us the details of this halacha. And the last thing we see is that even warming the oil is considered cooking the oil, just like we saw in the opinion of Nachman bar Yitzchak explaining the Tanna Kama. Heating it all the way is not the problem, even just warming it, because what Rav Avdimi wanted to do here, what Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi wanted to do here was just to warm the oil, not to heat it up to the point of Yad Soledes. So the Gemara says, hold on a second, how could Rebbe tell Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi a halachic psak in the bathhouse? It's also to talk in Torah in the bathhouse, not even allowed to think in Torah in the bathhouse or in the bathroom. So Gemara first says, okay, maybe he said it to him in a different language. It wasn't in Lashon HaKodesh. So Gemara says that doesn't help. That doesn't help. The problem is not the language. You're not allowed to speak Torah in any language in the bathhouse. You can speak Lashon Kodesh in the bathhouse as long as you're not talking Torah, but you can't talk Torah in any language. So Gemara says no, he was allowed to because otherwise he would have done an Isser. He would have violated a halacha. In order to prevent people from doing that, you're allowed to say the halacha in the bathhouse. Gemara quotes a story that shows that same halacha. There was a student of Rabbi Meir who followed him into the bathhouse and he wanted to wash the floor for him. So Rabbi Meir said, you're not allowed to wash the floor on Shabbos. So he wanted to smear the floor with special oil. So Rabbi Meir said, you're not allowed to smear oil on Shabbos. So here you see that in order to prevent somebody from doing an Aveira, you're allowed to tell him halacha even in a bathhouse. The Gemara now says you can actually learn another fourth halacha from that whole story with Rebbe. Ravina says you can see that it's forbidden to cook in water that's heated by the hot springs of Tveria. We weren't sure about that. Earlier we had a machlokas whether it was considered to be heated by the sun, in which case it would be machlokas whether it's permitted to cook in it or whether it's considered to be heated by fire. So here you see clearly that it's forbidden to cook in hot springs, and the word that's used here is that he's chayev, which apparently means that it's an iser d'oraisa. So Gemara says, or Rav Chisda said, what do you mean? How can you say that it's an iser d'oraisa? At best it's an iser d'rabanan hot springs. Rav Chisda says that. Gemara says, yeah, that's what Ravina meant. He didn't mean chayev a carbon, that's an iser d'oraisa, he meant chayev makas mardas. He's violating an iser d'rabanan. Okay, now the Gemara has another halacha which relates to swimming. Interesting discussion here. Rabbi Zera says, I once saw Rabbi Avo in an in-ground swimming pool on Shabbos. And I don't know if he was standing on the ground of the pool or if he was floating. Now, floating would be an isser. Floating would be like swimming. So Gemara says, how could Rabbi Zera have a question whether he was floating or not? It's forbidden to float. It's forbidden to swim on Shabbos. It's forbidden even if the pool is inside a yard. It's in Rosh Hashanah, so there's no problem of carrying if you splash water out of the pool into the yard. But it's forbidden anyway, and the reason why it's forbidden to swim is because Chazal made a gezerah, you may come to build a raft. So the Gemara answers this is different. The isser of swimming and the concern that you may build a raft is only in a natural body of water, like a river or a lake, or something similar to it, where there's a incline from the surface of the ground to the surface of the water. It's not level. But this case, the surface of the water was on level with the ground that was around it, and that's very different than your standard natural body of water, so therefore the isser of swimming does not apply.